I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's a statement that I think both me and you vehemently disagree with, and the fact that this was 2 weeks after a school shooting. I don't think that it has to be that way, and I think most Americans don't feel that it has to be that way.
You know, I mean, look, I think the one thing he was right about, right, is you're never going to get down to zero. Political violence, I don't think should never be accepted in this country around anybody or accepted anywhere, really. The fact that somebody just went out and, from what we know or kind of learning, right, or at least the expectation is that somebody went out and shot him because of his political views and things that he stood for. And I'm against any violence of any kind, right? Political violence, like racial violence, religious violence, none of it is good and all of it's bad. And anytime anybody kind of feels they have a need or to kind of take something out, for nothing more than hate, it's not good.
Yeah. And seeing everyone, like the different reactions to it, particularly, I think, from the president. Obviously, he had this Truth Social post that's 1B once Charlie Kirk had officially been announced as dead. But seeing not just how he's been kind of using it, and I feel like almost not, no pun intended here, but like jumping the gun to try to blame certain groups of individuals for having perpetrated it. Immediately there was a bunch of rumors online that this was a transgender individual, and then it switched to, oh, well, this was an illegal immigrant. And we saw even the governor of Utah at some point say, I'm upset that it was one of us.
This bad stuff happens, and for 33 hours, I was praying that if this had to happen here, that it wouldn't be one of us, that somebody drove from another state, somebody came from another country,
or that it wasn't an illegal person or someone else, that it would have been easier to blame. How have you been kind of reacting to the divisiveness that I think one side of the political spectrum right now is trying to create out of this situation?
Well, look, I think, a real leader would go out there and try and really defuse a situation, right, to calm people down, to kind of speak out against things. I think the Utah governor has kind of tried to make an attempt at that, to kind of he's spoken out against this and against like any type of violence against anyone. Unfortunately, I don't think the president knows how to do that. That's just not his nature. It's not who he is, right? He doesn't know how to calm the situation. I think some of the things he said have kind of probably added flames to the fire. But this is not a time, I think, to jump to reactions. It's let's find out the details. Let's find out what happened. Let's do the investigations. Let's, get the real story. Like you said, right? It's so many conclusions have been drawn like on this or what it was, or people said he was MAGA, and then people said, wow, this could have been between the Fuentes Kirk feud that's kind of going out there. Now I think the thing you're hearing now, it's like, well, his girlfriend was transgender, and but we don't know, right? I think we need to kind of, like I said, let's find out all the details. Let's get everything that we know, and then let's kind of put the facts together and kind of then, I don't want to say we're not drawing conclusions, but let's, find out what happened by the facts that are retrieved from those investigating the crime.
Yeah, and I think, like, irrespective of whether this individual was MAGA or this individual was a leftist or they were a Democrat, I think that the notion of like trying to say, okay, because they were X, that's why they did Y, is what kind of got us in this situation of political tension. We've talked about Charlie Kirk consistently on this show. The first episode, we even were bringing up him going on Governor Gavin Newsom's podcast. Right. And, we didn't necessarily agree with a lot of the things I didn't agree with anything that Charlie Kirk said. But the divisiveness, the drawing, these boundaries, saying illegal immigrants are X, Y, and Z, and they're always going to be X, Y, and Z, and that's why they're criminals. Or saying, as Kirk often did, that black individuals lack X, Y, and Z, therefore, Z, Y, and X. Trying to categorize these people as, just this and nothing else, I think is the problem in our country right now, creating labels and boxing someone into that label. And trying to use that as an explainer for why individuals do certain things.
People should always be based on what they do, how they perform, who they are, never on their color, their religion, whether they're a man or a woman, or what their sexual orientation is. None of that should factor into like any thought, right? It should be just, who is this individual? Who is this person? That's how I try and live life. I don't, make conclusions about anyone just based on who they are or what they are, right? It's like, okay, how do I know this person? Let me learn about this person as an individual and what they're capable of. I think that's what good leaders do, right? And I mean, that was definitely, when I was a young naval officer, right, kind of having to deal with people, right, you kind of learn who you can trust and who you can have faith in and really kind of go after that you can count on in order to get the job done and to take care of things. Sometimes those people get overburdened because you rely on them too much, and others, those that you can't really trust, you don't really have faith, kind of maybe tend to get off a little bit more because you're not going to give them something important that needs to be done when you don't have faith that they can do it.
Sure.
But that's just the way that it should be, right? It's that you judge a person by who they are and what they're capable of doing, and not just make assumptions about who they are.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that too, because I feel like that's something that I learned really, funnily enough, like going into high school, just always trying to base individuals off of like my own experiences with them, not even like experiences of like, oh, this person said this about this person, so now I think that they are, a bad individual or whatnot. It's always like, even if someone that I'm really close to has had a negative experience with someone else, I try to give that person the benefit of the doubt because my relationship with them might be completely different than, someone else's experience with them. And I feel like we have gotten into this mentality of, if a person, again, is a Republican, then they have to believe this, that, and the other, or they are this, that, and the other. If a person is a Democrat, then they have to believe this, that, and the other. And seeing the president of the United States, and earlier today, actually, J.D. Vance, the vice president, he hosted Charlie Kirk's show, and he reiterated some of these ideas. I think that they have a specific interest in dividing us and in preventing the country from coming together and moving forward as a nation.
Yeah, I don't know what their mentality is or what they're thinking. I don't know why they're wanting to do this, division or whatever thing, right? But, I think there's been violence taken out against both sides, right? Obviously we know about the Minnesota legislatures that were killed earlier this year. So it's not a one-side thing, right? And again, right, I think good leaders are going to try and calm the situation and kind of bring, peace and civility to it, right? I'm not going to speak for J.D. Vance. I'm not going to speak for Donald Trump and what their mentality is. All I want to know, or all I'm going to say is that, we need... this is just unacceptable, no matter who it is, right? And no person should ever be targeted because of their views or their religion or the color of their skin or sexual orientation or anything, right? It is unacceptable to do this, right? It is unacceptable to do that, violence against anybody, and it shouldn't be tolerated, no matter who it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And another takeaway from this, too, I think, is the importance of gun legislation. Mm-hmm. And, I made a video talking about the passing of Charlie Kirk. And one thing that I, was sure to make a point of is the fact that when we are saying that we want gun safety, when we are saying that we want gun legislation, we're saying it for exactly what took place that afternoon. We're saying it to protect everyone. It's not we're only trying to protect Democrats or we're only trying to protect this category of people. Gun are the number one cause of death for children right now. And just even thinking about that reality in the United States of America is so devastating personally for me and concerning, right? I feel like a kid shouldn't be, that's not what should be their number one concern on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, more people attempt suicide by trying an overdose, right? Or taking drugs or doing some type of prescription thing, right? More people attempt that than actually, shooting themselves. But the results as far as what's more effective is, obviously shooting yourself has a lot more.
Yeah.
It's more likely to happen that the person's going to die by suicide than actually taking, prescriptions that are drugs that they shouldn't take, even though that's attempted more, right? We're still seeing more people die by gunshot wounds or by suicide by a firearm than people, taking drugs by, trying to kill themselves that way, even though it's attempted a lot more.
Yeah, and I think that's important too because, surviving a suicide attempt is, you're more likely to go on with your life, to move forward, to realize that, I did have this will to live.
Yeah.
There's anecdotes of individuals who are standing over the bridge and, they jump off and by some miracle they manage to survive. And they always recount how on the fall down, they were regretting everything that had led them to that decision. And by passing gun legislation, even if it's 5% more people that you help overcome that, or 10% prevent the deaths that you prevent, that's a significant difference.
Well, the thing that's known, right, and there's research out there that has kind of shown this, right, the red flag laws, which I know some people are against, but we have in California, in my state, taking the person's gun away from them if they feel either it be the police or a family member who calls and says like, hey, I think this person needs to get their guns taken away from them temporarily, works, right? Because most people, when they make that decision to commit suicide, it is a just spur of the moment decision that they're going to do right now. And if they have access to the weapon or to a firearm, they're going to pick it up and they're going to use it. But if you can create that separation, when they might have this thought, we know that it's less likely that that'll happen, and the thought of suicide will go away, and they'll get past it, right?
Yeah.
So these things do work, right? And it is bad, but assault weapon bans, background checks, these are things that the American people want.
Yeah,
right?
they're popular.
And they are popular. And it's, one of the things Charlie Kirk said about how this is just a sacrifice that we have to make in order to kind of protect the Second Amendment. I don't agree with that statement that he made, right? I have, different opinions about the Second Amendment. It was the Supreme Court for the longest time saw it as a state right until later in the 20th century, where I think it was mostly Justice Scalia kind of had a different view about that. He said the part about maintaining a well-protected militia was just fluff.
Yeah.
It didn't really matter. I don't agree, right? If you read some of the Federalist Papers and some of the early things into the Founding Fathers, the purpose of the Second Amendment was to let people have a weapon, because the thing they never, ever envisioned us having was like a large standing army, right? Which we have now, right? I mean, we have a huge military, but that was just something that was not conceivable to them. And so they needed militias, men to have their weapons so that they could come when they were called to come protect their communities.
Yeah.
It's not about, like you always hear people say, oh, well, the Second Amendment's there so that we can be able to rebel against tyranny.
Yeah.
That was not the case, right? Because, the Whiskey Rebellion was shot down by the government. The Civil War was taken care of by the government. There was nothing in there about anywhere that you'll see anything where it was about kind of from the Founding Fathers about like, well, we need to make sure people have weapons in case they need to revolt against the government. And I think a lot of that comes from, you know, Thomas Jefferson was a revolutionary at heart, right? Who kind of spoke and kind of wrote about like, well, maybe there should be a little rebellion in the country.
Yeah.
Every so often.
Yeah, every 20 years.
Yeah. But, you know, that wasn't, you know, he wasn't one of the writers of the Constitution.
Yeah.
Right. And he actually he didn't believe, at least initially, in a strong federal government, but he was probably one of the earliest presidents to kind of go out and kind of create it, right? When he was actually in the presidency.
Yeah.
You know, stronger federal government. But, yeah, I you know, these arguments about like, well, the argument that Charlie Kirk tried to make was just, you know, it's just very unfortunate.
Yeah, we have the clip actually here. That's 1C of him saying that basically like it's something that it goes around the minute mark.
You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's a statement that I think both me and you vehemently disagree with, and the fact that this was 2 weeks after a school shooting. I don't think that it has to be that way, and I think most Americans don't feel that it has to be that way.
You know, I mean, look, I think the one thing he was right about, right, is you're never going to get down to zero.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something that happens. But, you know, the one thing I do know, and you can look at the United Kingdom, right, where they don't allow guns. Their police officers don't even really carry guns when they're out on the beat and patrol. You know, they don't have as many deaths as we do by gunfire and gunshots and things like that, right? So, you know, if you want to look at that, it is, you know, it is effective, right? And it can make a difference.